Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Your hosts, Joseph and Michelle Whalen, a husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics, are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom.
Welcome to Insights into Entertainment. This is episode 111, Backstories, Buyouts and Cancellations. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my considerate and thoughtful co-host, Michelle Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, sweetheart?
I am fabulous, and you?
I am equally fabulous.
I'm so glad to hear it.
So, how was your week this week?
Long.
Yeah.
And it's not over yet.
Not over. We still got one more day. But hey, long weekend, right?
Kinda, sorta, yeah, for some.
For some of us, yeah.
For some of us.
You don't have to put a full day in on Monday, though, right?
Yeah, here's to hoping.
There you go. Hope in one hand and, well, that's not for this podcast.
No, that is not.
That's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about
What are we talking about today?
We're talking entertainment. We always talk entertainment. Right. So today in our Disney Detective are more virtual queues coming to Disney parks. And get your wallets ready for another Disney auction. Then in our Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy, goodbye Rangers, we hardly knew you. And is Disney finally going to fix the Snoke problem?
Nice.
Then in our entertainment news, is Amazon taking over the world?
They're trying to.
Disney might have something to say about that.
They might.
And we'll talk about the passing of a Disney legend. And then we'll finish up with our insightful picks of the week. And we do have an afterthought this week from an event we attended on Saturday?
Sunday.
Sunday. And then we'll talk about what we're doing this weekend, too, for those who might have tickets in the area or can get something like that.
Sure.
But anyway, are you ready to get started?
Sure, let's do this.
Well, before we get started, I do want to invite folks to subscribe to the podcast. You can get video versions of all the network's podcasts listed as Insights into Things. You can get audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Entertainment. We are available on Google, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, any place you can get a podcast these days. I would also encourage folks to contact us, give us your feedback, tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. On Twitter, we are at insights_things. On Facebook, we are at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. On Instagram, we are at insightsintothings. Or you can get links to all those on our website at www.insightsintothings.com. Ready?
Sure.
I love the enthusiasm. Here we go. Go for Disney Detective.
So it seems that there is a new Disney patent that was just registered not that long ago. And the patent is kind of a glimpse into how the company may be addressing what it sees as operational issues. So the patent application was published in May of 2021, and it addresses something theme park visitors dread: waiting in a standby queue. So what they're calling the dynamic management of virtual queues provides a possible solution. Obviously, one of the drawbacks of requiring guests to wait in a queue is the physiological and psychological toll that it actually takes on, a prolonged wait time for most guests. As common experiences will testify, waiting in a line that is, at best tedious, and depending on the length of the wait and the environmental conditions, might also be physically uncomfortable. Obviously, other drawbacks of guests waiting in a queue for so long is that it keeps them from enjoying other attractions that are, possibly in the same venue or near the same area that they're in, and also potential revenue that the park isn't making from those guests that are waiting, in this very, very long line. So when you read through this article, there are all these diagrams and flowcharts and everything, basically trying to explain what each of the patents kind of how they would work. In some cases, they're very similar to the Fast Pass program that they already have, where you can only make so many Fast Passes within a certain amount of time, and once it expires, then you can make other arrangements. The other talks about being able to kind of pre-validate you so that it would have information about the age of your children. So if it's a ride that you have to be a certain height for, it might not let you get on the queue for that. So there's all these different variations of it that they're proposing. So one would be where, okay, you go to get on a line and the wait time is, say, 45 minutes. So it puts you in a queue where you're not physically waiting on that line for the 45 minutes. It'll notify you like 10 minutes beforehand that you have to start coming back. And then you could go off and do something else within that area. And then the way that the system, from, what I was reading about it, if you go and try and do something else, it knows that you already have a wait time within the next 45 minutes. So that might give you a wait time for an hour and a half, taking into account, it's going to, take you, you have 45 minutes to do the other ride, and then your travel time or what else. So it again, it sounds like it's a little bit more advanced than the Fast Pass system, which, as far as I know, they're not utilizing right now, but they're probably going to be starting it back up because they're opening up capacity in the different parks. Now, the only thing as of right now that they're using the virtual queue for is Rise of the Resistance. But with that, when it first started, you had to physically be in the park by a certain time to try and get the queue. Then they kind of opened it up, and you didn't have to necessarily be in the park, but you had to already have your reservation for that day to get it. But then they were doing like multiple releases of tickets. So they were doing like a 7 a.m., they were doing like a 10 a.m. and like a 2 p.m., so that if you didn't necessarily get the first batch, you had a second. So this doesn't talk about like the time of anything, but it does mention, you would need to have some sort of smartphone device to be able to access it. And again, it's kind of like a melding of the current Fast Pass system and the virtual queue that they already use. But in some cases, it also kind of reminded me of, if you remember when we went to Disneyland and you had the scooter and we went to go to the Haunted Mansion and they didn't have, a handicap entrance. They gave you a handy, or I don't remember what they called it, guests with disabilities pass or something, and they gave us a specific time to come back. So it kind of sounds like that, where it would be on a bigger scale. It wouldn't just be for certain guests, it would be for every guest. This way, they don't have all these people waiting online. You could go and do other things to, be able to do more during your day.
Well, I have to say, as someone who goes to Disney probably more than is healthy, and somebody who hates waiting,
Mm-hmm.
it's about freaking time they decided to throw some technology at this.
Mm-hmm.
What they did for Rise of the Resistance worked out exceedingly well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Even though you had to be in the park at the time to do it. But they've been throwing technology at ride queues for quite some time now. And the whole purpose was to keep you occupied in the queue. So in typical Disney fashion, they turned waiting in line into an attraction.
Right.
And to me, you're still waiting in line.
Right.
I don't care if there's stuff that I can push and screens that entertain me and whatever.
Right.
I don't want to have to wait in line if I don't have to. So the concept of this, where we had found out quite some time ago that they were tracking where you were going with your magic bands. Because they were using it for photos on rides and stuff like that. So experimenting with that technology early on to track users in the park seems to be the next logical step to that, where they can manage queues now. So instead of making the queues longer and giving you buttons to push to keep you occupied, let's reduce the size of queues. Let's give you the ability to schedule yourself around these queues, and let's throw technology at it. Let's finally use technology to manage the queues, not manage the guests.
Right.
And I think this is a brilliant idea. I hope they roll this out. I can't imagine they're going to roll it out on all rides.
Right. I could definitely see them opening it up on the e-ticket rides.
Your e-ticket rides, yeah.
You know, your big...
Your premier rides.
Your premier rides, and then you have your lower levels where you have to wait. Okay, so if I'm waiting 10, 15 minutes on a smaller ride, at least I can go do that knowing that my place...
The advantage that you have with that is now that you can reserve a place in line through the virtual queues, it will likely lessen the queues at the secondary rides as well, because now you're scheduling yourself around them.
Right.
So now those secondary queues become your line. Those secondary rides become your queue.
Right.
You know, that's where you're being entertained, is in these other ones until it's your turn to get on.
Right. And I could see them also, you know, once things kind of start opening back up, offering more shows, offering more magical things to do to fill your time, you know, while you're waiting for, oh, we got 10 more minutes. What do we want to do? Oh, let's go get an ice cream, or let's go get
And I can see them giving you, putting the stage shows on in a manner, you know, based on locations and times tied to those queues.
Right.
So it allows them to be more organized in how they're having their talent out there in the first place. So I think this is a great idea. I commend them for it. I hope to see how it works in practice, and I think it's going to work out very well.
Yeah.
I think you're going to find a lot more satisfied guests in your parks now because of this.
Oh, absolutely.
So what else do we have?
So this was a story that had popped up from the ocregister.com, and it seems that there is a Disney collection that is going to be auctioned as the collector is selling his home and moving to the beach. So Disney collector Scott Rummel sold his 4-bedroom home in California that he and his wife Terry had spent the last 23 years transforming into their own happiest place on earth. There are assorted ride vehicles, hand silk-screened attraction posters, and other objects from his 25,000-piece Disneyland and Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom collection, which has infused almost every corner of the 4,500-square-foot house. But unfortunately, the house being sold, none of the Disney stuff was being sold with it. The house actually fetched $2.24 million with multiple offers six days after its listing, and actually closed at 12% over the asking price. So again, buyer's market. He had said, I didn't want to make it so kitschy that a family couldn't move in, or whatever their own spin on the house is. Rummel, who is a Hollywood voiceover talent, plans to relocate to Dana's Point and is auctioning most of his collection. He said the biggest auction, where a guy like me sold off his whole house full of Disney stuff, got about $7 million in 2 days. If I do half of that, I'd be very happy. Going to auction is all of his big stuff, including 4 vintage ride vehicles, which include a rocket jet rocket, an Autotopia car, a car from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride from Magic Kingdom with the 2-row seat versus the Disneyland version. Another is a Skyway Gondola, which a similar one had actually sold at auction for $600,000 once before. So the gondola actually anchors the upstairs bonus room where it shares space with a 70-pound Monstro the Whale Tooth. There's a Pirates of the Caribbean pinball machine, hand-painted attraction signs that once were attached to the inside of Disneyland, the Disneyland Omnibus. He also has a 1955 Disneyland opening day pennant that hangs among hundreds of narrow-pointed signs. Just looking at pictures of his house, like every room, it's so tastefully done. It's not, overcrowded. His one bathroom is like tiki room themed. He has a brick hallway going to his kitchen that he has a Haunted Mansion plaque. Just tons and tons of stuff. One of the other things was that it seems that his grandfather actually helped build the Columbia ship. So he has some artifacts, from that as well. And then one of the areas, he has a Club 33 sign, which was actually an original from the park. He's spent time at Club 33 as well. So he had said that he had his dad's 75th birthday at Club 33. They had their wedding anniversary, their 33rd wedding anniversary at Club 33, and knew one of the sign makers who actually had one of the original signs because they had swapped some signs out, and the guy kept it, and he knew that he was a collector, so they made a trade for it. So that was one of the things. Unfortunately, that's something that's going with him. So there are things he's actually taking to his house, but a lot of the stuff they are selling. But what's interesting is they're moving, I guess, closer to the beach, and their new home is going to be Caribbean beach themed from the Caribbean Beach Resort down in Orlando. So very cool. And it was just interesting looking at all of his collectibles, because it's, obviously some very unique stuff. He actually was also the voice of Disneyland during the 90s as well. So obviously he has a connection and got, some good stuff probably, from that as well. So it'll be interesting to see how much, the collection goes for.
So what of his Haunted Mansion stuff are you going to bid on?
The only thing that he had or that they talked about was just the plaque. He didn't, have anything else, because like the one room is all train themed. Like I said, the one was tiki room themed. So,
Now, are they doing this as an online auction as well?
There was no information actually about when or where it was. So I'll have to kind of do some searching to see, what pops up. So
I have to wonder how much of the collection he's taken with him to the new house.
Right, because you figure, maybe downsizing. Oh, the other thing too was he actually had kind of hidden behind a wall. He had like his own little theater, and it kind of looked like the Main Street Cinema. It had that Main Street Cinema look to it with, a couple of movie row seats and stuff. So that looked, I was like, well, that's really cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, so.
Oh, well.
So
that's it for our Disney Detective.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back in a minute with our Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com. Go for Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy.
So it seems that one of the new Star Wars series has already been canceled. Wah, 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 wah. So it seems that Dave Filoni, the man who made Star Wars The Clone Wars immersive enough to qualify as canon, recently was given a raise at Lucasfilms, courtesy of Kathleen Kennedy herself. So a purist in his own right, Filoni was granted the Herculean task of overseeing Kennedy's slate of Star Wars projects, ensuring each project remains connected to a larger, more overarching narrative, and in the process, eventually completed. But one of the shows has already been left behind. Bye-bye. And that seems to be the Mandalorian spin-off, Rangers of the New Republic. So the article kind of goes on to say, is it something that because they were trying to say, oh, well, because he got a raise, he's trying to, not do so much and kind of, handpick the projects that are, the ones that everybody's looking forward to versus, oversaturating. And, the article does go on to talk about how, there's just so much that had been announced that was going to be coming out. More than likely something wasn't going to eventually make the roster. They had all these great ideas, and then once they started moving with them, okay, what's the top ones? What can we kind of put to the bottom? Star Wars Rangers of the New Republic was originally going to be the Cara Dune storyline, and she was going to take the reins as the protagonist of the show. Obviously, with everything that kind of, went on, is it because of, the downfall of everything in her character? Is that why? Did they just maybe not see it going in a different direction? Not really sure. So, basically, it got canceled or it's on hold, depending on, who you're asking. But obviously they have other things that they're working on. You have the Book of Boba Fett, which is the next thing that's going to be streaming. And then obviously the new season of The Mandalorian. The cast is already filming in Los Angeles. And then you have Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, which are in pre-production, and obviously The Bad Batch, which is currently on Disney Plus right now, and Book of Boba Fett is supposed to be coming out in December. So, oh well.
Well, and when they get announced all those projects, I kind of, my first reaction was they're flooding it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to do too much.
Right.
I think of all the projects, the one that was probably the least in demand, just from a character richness standpoint, was this show.
Right. And that's probably, I think it was kind of, hey, let's put a whole bunch of different ideas, throw some darts and see what sticks.
Right. And then the dissolution of the relationship with the actress that was going to be playing Cara Dune in the series probably was really what put it over the top that this had to be the one that had to go.
Right.
Now, that's not to say they're not going to do it at some point in time.
Right.
They certainly have, concept work done on it. They've got some script work done on it. So it may just be one of those things that we're going to put this one on the shelf. We're going to do the 50 that we have already.
Right.
We'll see which
Right.
ones of those stick around. Because,
Right.
You figure Obi-Wan's a mini series, basically.
Right,
So
right.
that's not going to be a long-term one.
Right.
And, we'll see if we've got resources, later on, then there's a demand for it. I think that's the problem, is
Right.
that they had very ambitious goals with all these projects, I don't know if the demand was there. I think they struck gold, and this is what's happened with Star Wars under the Disney mantra is there was a glut for Star Wars
Right.
for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Disney buys it. They come out with a couple of movies in the Star Wars, the Skywalker franchise. We won't get into whether they were good movies or not, but they tried to branch out from there.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Rogue One, which was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had Solo. Then there wasn't a demand for Star Wars movies anymore. So then they decided to move to TV.
Right.
So they finished the Clone Wars series, which Disney had. It still boggles the mind that they immediately canceled it as soon as they acquired the property. So they finished that. Then they gave you Rebels. Then they gave you whatever the one that came after that nobody watched. Then they gave you the first live action one with Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
And they knocked it out of the park.
Right.
So what's the first thing they do? What does Disney always do when they get something that's a great thing?
We need to do more of it.
Right. More of a good thing is a better thing, right?
Right.
And you wind up with 3 spinoffs that came off of this one show. It's like, whoa, guys, hang on. You're only in your second season of this show at this point in time.
Right.
How about we get some character development in? How about we do a spinoff? Everybody loved Boba Fett. They brought him back into the series, and all of a sudden he has his own spinoff.
He gets his own spinoff now.
It's almost like every guest star that shows up gets their own spinoff because Disney thinks they can make money off of it. That's like, you got to stop. You're saturating it again.
Right.
You tried to do the same thing with the movies. You need to back off a little bit. You need to let it's like wine, okay? You need to give the wine a chance to age here before you start, slopping it around everywhere. And, I think this is a sign of that. I think what you're seeing is they've got a couple of very talented individuals that are working there. I think we're very fortunate that we have Filoni and Favreau who are working on these projects at this point in time. But there's only so much they can do.
And I think that's the other thing, too, is that they don't want to fail either. So probably, it's like, all right, now that I'm in charge of a little bit more, let's kind of look at things and go, where do we want to focus our energy in the right place that makes the most sense?
Right.
And that's probably...
And part of the problem they ran into is they painted themselves into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
So you take this 35-year time jump from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens. You offer almost no backstory in between those 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you play out the rest of the Skywalker saga. Well, then they want to go back and they want to fill in those blanks. And the problem that you have, and we'll talk about it in the next story, is the 3 movies that they put out to sum up the Skywalker saga were a disorganized jumble of random thoughts that, like, it was almost like 15 people wrote the scripts and everyone got part of their idea in there, but you didn't have a coherent story anywhere.
Right.
So now they're coming out with all these other TV shows that are supposed to fill that gap, but you don't know what that gap is because you didn't have a coherent story in the first place. Mm-hmm. So now these are all kind of going off in their own direction here. And at some point in time, you hope that they lead to where these, sequel movies showed up. Mm-hmm. And right now they're not because they're going off in their own directions.
Right.
So, Rangers of the New Republic was supposed to kind of take you in that direction, but I don't know if that's necessary given what we're seeing in Mandalorian now and what we're seeing with the other spin-offs with the Book of Boba, with Ahsoka. There's all kinds. What we talked about last week with Mara Jade coming in.
And that's the thing, is it might be one of those, aspects that they were going to put into this can be sprinkled among all the others to kind of
and that's exactly it, because
all
the Rangers
together.
of the New Republic show up in small quantities, in small doses in The Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. Well, they still can show up in all these other shows.
Right, because everybody's all linked together.
And you probably didn't have enough for an actual series of them.
Right.
But these can be those things that tie the threads of the other shows together.
Or you could even do, if each of these other shows are all within the same timeline, you could even do a Rangers themed show in
Absolutely.
Book of Boba. You can do a Rangers theme, so like you could almost have like all the same characters show up, and here's them interacting with Boba, here's with Ahsoka, here's with the Mandalorian, and kind of have like that tie-in.
Yeah, when you spin so many shows off of one show,
right?
Having an element that can cross between all of those to tie them together makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Not having it as its own show, but having it as recurring characters that you see.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who wouldn't want to see Dave Filoni in an X-Wing pilot suit again?
He would love to do that again.
That was so awesome.
Right.
You know, have him go around as one of the Rangers of the Republic and have him show up in all the other shows.
Right. Taika Waititi should,
absolutely
show up.
You know, and that would be like your golden opportunity because everybody wants to do cameos. That would be a great way to do cameos in all the shows.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you're a Ranger now, so you get to be in all the shows.
Right.
You know, that type of thing. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not disappointed at this. I'm kind of glad they're pulling the reins back a little bit, and I think they might be correcting some of the overambitious ideas that they had with this.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what else do we have?
All right, so hopefully this will make sense. So it seems that Dave Filoni is now trying to erase the Star Wars sequels Snoke problem. So the Star Wars sequel trilogy has some plot holes at best. At worst, it completely ruined the Star Wars universe George Lucas spent decades upon decades of his life building. So no matter which Star Wars camp you fall into, we can all agree upon the fact that Supreme Leader Snoke was far from the best villain in the Star Wars franchise had ever seen. So Snoke really didn't serve, much of a purpose in any of these movies. His original story was never really fully explained, and his primary purpose kind of seemed, to basically allow Kylo Ren to ultimately take over as Supreme Leader, as he was basically a placeholder for, Ben Solo without a real story of his own. So it seems that during The Mandalorian Season 2, showrunner Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni had already started explaining Snoke's origin better than the Star Wars sequels ever did when they introduced Dr. Persing and his clone experiments to Moff Gideon. So now Filoni is kind of picking up where he left off in his latest Star Wars animated series, The Bad Batch. Now, I haven't watched any of that. I know you've watched a little bit of it.
2 episodes behind right now.
Okay. So I guess they kind of talk about this a little bit more in The Bad Batch with the various clones, and that it starts off with that there are a bunch of clones that when Palpatine is executing Order 66, they kind of don't understand what's going on, so they kind of go and do their own thing, I guess. They become the Bad Batch. So now a couple of different Star Wars fans have
sounds like burnt cookies. Bad Batch.
Sometimes burnt cookies aren't so bad. So now, a couple of different Star Wars fans have kind of theorized that, the Kaminoans, that they're, kind of closely tied to Snoke,
They're the
and that
with the long necks.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And that the Mandalorians, Dr. Persing's experiments on Grogu and even Rey were kind of part of that whole thing, kind of meshed together. So again, most, and obviously if we, go through and watch more of The Bad Batch, there's probably a little bit more that kind of explains, and kind of tries to fix it, I guess, to better understand, where Snoke came from and how he, came to power, and kind of why, other things happened later on in the series. So again, we haven't, you've watched more than I have, but I haven't watched any of it. So again, all these different kind of theories coming in, to kind of, I guess, better answer who this guy was and how he came to to power.
So one of the things that's probably worth mentioning is that in the expanded universe, the concept of cloning existed. And even in the prequels, when we had the clones show up for the Clone Wars, the understanding is that they could not, the technology at the time could not clone Force users.
Right.
So they could clone regular people, they could make armies out of them, and so forth. And it wasn't until in the later books, the Thrawn books, as a matter of fact, where you start to see them experimenting with Force users being cloned.
Right.
And one of the key ones there was a Jedi that was cloned. His name was Jorah Sabath. And he was cloned successfully, but the cloning process and the way that the Force works, he goes insane. So there was numerous experiments that Palpatine was trying to go through in the expanded universe to generate a clone that he could transfer his essence into. So they allude to this in a few other canon mediums, one being one of the Star Wars games that you can play, and the storyline itself goes along with this operation that Palpatine had planned, so that if he dies, this operation goes into effect, and part of it has to do with them putting these cloning cylinders in hiding. Then you have a few of the novels deal with this, where he's cloning his body, and his essence survives the Death Star, and his essence transfers into the bodies. But because of the power of the Force, the bodies, he's basically burning through the bodies.
Okay.
So he can't sustain himself in a cloned body for long. So then we fast forward to Rise of Skywalker, and you have that really weird scene where Palpatine's introduced, and you see a clone that looks like Snoke in this tube somewhere.
Right.
And that's supposed to represent the fact that these are his clones that he has been trying to
do for so long.
Exactly.
Right.
And then the scenes that we see in The
Mandalorian
are the same thing, where they're trying to take, Groku's cells or blood or whatever, and use that to clone a Force-sensitive body that Palpatine. So that's sort of their expansion,
right?
Their explanation of the expanded universe version of the cloning. And it's supposed to ultimately wind up with Snoke, where they couldn't keep cloning the body. So there's speculation that the Palpatine that you see in Rise of Skywalker is Palpatine in his original body, because they could not come up with a viable clone.
After trying.
Right. So Snoke was put in place to run the Empire while they tried to perfect this.
Gotcha.
In the process.
So he was a placeholder, really.
Right. But none of that's explained in the movies.
Right.
So you get this person who is,
all powerful.
Literally larger than life when you first see him, because you see him as this giant hologram.
Right.
And then when he finally shows up, he's this frail, shadow of a being who, ironically, looks very much like the species that Palpatine's master was supposed to be. So there was always speculation about him being Darth Plagueis, but obviously he wasn't. There was speculation that he was a resurrected version of Darth Vader because of some of the wounds on his face, but he wasn't. So there was all these false cues that they put in the movies, and then they chopped them in half in the second movie. And there's no explanation whatsoever.
Right.
So this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that the sequels were just a jumbled mess of different ideas that everybody wrote down a story plot, they threw it all in a hat, and they put 10 out, and that became a movie.
Here's our movie.
So it's a mess. It really is. And Force Awakens started the mess, but it was, he played to the fans with a lot of what he did there. And then Rian Johnson came in and decided that, we're just going to throw out all those ideas and come up with a whole new set of bad ideas.
Start it all over again.
And he decided to start a trilogy all over again with one movie. And then Abrams came in and had to
and
kind
said,
of
"Oh, great! Now I got to clean up this
right.
mess."
So Abrams gets
Right.
handed this steaming pile of trash and has to sort of pick out the pieces that he can use and try to put some kind of story together.
Right.
And in the meantime, from Force Awakens to Rise of Skywalker, you don't have a coherent story.
Right.
And now all these other shows are trying to clean that mess up. And really, you should just throw out the sequels. Just give me what J.J. Abrams did with Star Trek. Okay, give me a time travel alternate universe and all that happened in an alternate universe.
That would be interesting.
And then here's the real movies that should have been made. That this is the real universe.
Yeah.
You know, let Luke wake up. You know, give me a sitcom finale and have Luke wake up and it was all a dream and really here's the real movies. So I don't know. We'll see. It's like they went down the rabbit hole with Force Awakens and they continue to just scratch at a festering wound there and make it worse. And I don't know how you heal it. I really don't without throwing out everything from the last 3 movies.
Yeah, that's kind of... And you can't really go back.
And they're trying to retcon a lot of this stuff with the TV shows now. And
Right,
you can't because it's 35 years ago.
Right.
You know, there's only so much cleanup that you can do to try to explain the steaming mess that you have.
Yeah.
But, you know, thank God for the Mythbusters who proved you really can shine a turd, though. And that's what Disney's trying to do here. They're trying to shine a turd.
Nice.
So that was all we had for our... What was that? Tales from the edge of the
galaxy.
Tales from the edge of my sanity.
I like that. That should be a podcast.
We'll be right back with our entertainment news of the week.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Go for entertainment news.
So it seems that MGM has now been sold to Amazon for $8.45 billion.
$1 billion.
I was waiting for that. So the tech giant will add a big collection of Hollywood classics and potential franchises to its Prime membership mix. In a landmark mega deal, Amazon is acquiring MGM Holdings, whose storied studios boast one of the largest film and TV libraries, in a bid to super turbocharge its Prime membership offerings to customers and potentially get mine intellectual properties of franchises such as James Bond and Rocky. The deal, which is still pending some regulatory approval, is valued at $8.45 billion. Obviously, it's a treasure trove of, a deep catalog. And the senior VP of Prime Video had said, it's a very exciting and provides for so many opportunities for high quality storytelling. So the acquisition, which was revealed just days after AT&T announced a $43 billion plan on May 17th to spin off its Warner Media division, including HBO and Warner Brothers, to Discovery marks the latest major consolidation to rattle the entertainment industry. So Amazon, who is led by Andy Jassy and Jeff Bezos, they've been, trying to push further into the Hollywood realm of things. So Amazon, which disclosed in April that it's $175 million Prime members have viewed movies on TV shows on its platform in the last year, is battling with Netflix, who has 207 million global subscriptions, and Disney has 103 million subscriptions, and they're basically trying to, be on top of both of those too. Obviously, Amazon is known for some of its scripted original content. One of the new series that's coming out is The Underground Railroad. Obviously, the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is a perennial Emmy nominee. And then it seems they're going to be coming out with the Lord of the Rings series coming out. Amazon also just earned Oscar nominations this year with The Sound of Metal, One Night in Miami, and the Borat sequel, which all came under the Amazon heading. And then it also seems that now they're looking to try and get some live NFL rights, including Thursday Night Football, and pulling it from Fox beginning in 2022. So, they're trying to take over the world. Obviously, there are, the MGM title goes back, basically as far as, movie history, really, when you think about it. So you have, over 4,000 titles, 17,000 hours of TV programming. So you have Bond movies, you have the Rocky movies, the Hobbit films, then, you also have, the classics like Raging Bull and Moonstruck, Thelma and Louise, Silence of the Lambs. But there's also, MGM also produces a lot of television as well. So you have the MGM TV, which produces Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale, FX Fargo, the History Channel's Viking show, and then, of course, they also do unscripted stuff like The Voice and Shark Tank. So they're all over the place. So this is kind of a big deal, especially for Amazon, because it's going to add, again, so much more content that really hasn't been, anywhere, because, again, it's all kind of over the place, but has never been in one location. So, it'll be interesting to see how this affects other things, moving forward.
This is a pretty bold move for Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Sam and I had talked on the last Insights into Tomorrow podcast about modern monopolies,
Mm-hmm.
and how Amazon really is in the crosshairs of the Justice Department right now and the federal government for how much control they have over so many different industries.
Mm-hmm.
And to orchestrate a deal like this and expect it to pass muster with the government, I think is very bold.
Mm.
This is huge. They already control a huge portion of the entertainment industry as it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge leap towards that monopolistic standing there. But I think it's also a sign of the times of the consolidation that we're seeing through various companies that are taking over the entire entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
Disney being, probably chief among those.
Right.
You've got Disney, you've got Netflix, you've got Amazon, Google to a lesser extent with some of their streaming stuff. But the problem that you're running into is you've got all these big major multi-billion-dollar companies that are gobbling up everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have three choices. We're going to be back to three networks again like we were 30 years ago.
Right.
I don't know if that's good for the market. I don't know if that's good for the consumer.
Well, I don't know, because now every time you turn on, it's hey, this show is coming and it's now moving to Paramount Plus.
Right.
Or,
Everyone's got their own
hey,
streaming
this one,
platform.
and it's Discovery Plus, and it's, like nothing's on regular TV anymore, or they'll do the first season on regular TV and then everything else moves to a premium channel. So if you want to watch it now, you have to.
And the streaming model works because it's not dependent on advertising, obviously, and that's the model that's driven the entertainment industry for almost 100 years now, was advertising. And with advertising, even with Nielsen ratings, when Nielsen would put technology in people's houses to see what they were watching, or they would send their surveys out, you would base your advertising revenue on what that information was, and at best, it was an educated guess. With streaming, you don't have that problem.
Right,
with streaming,
because
you know who your customer is, you know what they're buying, you know where they live, you know what their ethnicity is, you know so much about your customer now with streaming that the streaming model works. Not only are they paying a subscription, but these subscriptions that you're paying for aren't all ad-free.
Right.
You're seeing different tiers in your subscriptions now. So for Hulu, for $5 a month, you get it with ads. For, I don't know, $30 a month, you get it without ads. So it's like they're still making money off of you, but they're making money with such targeted advertising that it makes sense. That's not where my concern is. My concern is all these networks that are streaming now are going to be owned by 3 big companies. And when they're owned by 3 big companies, the cost to subscribe to these things is going to be astronomical. As soon as they own all the content and there's no other content, no other independent content out there to go after, then they can jack the rates up. That's how monopolies work.
Right.
And you're going to find that Amazon and Disney and all the big players in it are going to collude to own the market, to set their own rates. They may not be doing it now. It may be competition now, which it is. But this is how big industry has worked traditionally for 200 years in this country. Is you have all these independents or all these individuals that get gobbled up into consortiums. Those consortiums become mega, billion-dollar companies, and a few companies own everything. And once that happens, then they can fix prices. And whenever that happens, the consumers lose out on it. And this is another sign of that happening. So, good for Amazon. I'm a Prime subscriber, so I'm going to get to take advantage of all this stuff. But I guarantee you that if they're paying billions of dollars for this deal, your Amazon Prime subscription is going to go up significantly in the next few years.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. We'll see. What else did we have?
So we had, a little bit of sad news that happened the other day. So it seems that Samuel E. Wright, who was the voice of The Little Mermaid Sebastian the Crab, and also Broadway's Mufasa, passed away at 74. The news was actually posted on the Facebook page of the town of Montgomery, New York. They had said, Sam was an inspiration to all of us, and his family established the Hudson Valley Conservatory. Sam and his family have impacted countless Hudson Valley youth, always inspiring them to reach higher and dig deeper to become the best version of themselves. On top of his passion for the arts and his love of his family, Sam was most known for walking into a room and simply providing pure joy to those who interacted with him. He loved to entertain, he loved to make people smile, and he laughed, and he loved to love. Obviously, the majority of people know him as the voice of the Jamaican crab who served as King Triton's advisor and sings one of the most beloved songs in Disney canon. But he also was an accomplished Broadway actor, beginning in the original 1971 production of Jesus Christ Superstar. In 1974, he actually replaced Ben Vereen as the lead in Pippin. In the 90s, he appeared on Broadway in Over Here, The Tap Dance Kid, Welcome to the Club, and then in 1997, he originated the role of Mufasa in the Broadway production of The Lion King, and that actually earned his second Tony nomination. He did television as well. He did, various guest starring roles on All My Children, The Cosby Show, Spencer for Hire. And in 1988, he actually played jazz great Dizzy Gillespie in Clint Eastwood's Charlie Parker biopic Bird. But obviously, the role of Sebastian is what most people know him for, and the song Kiss the Girl, which was Best Song Oscar nominee for the movie as well. He did other things with Disney as Sebastian. There was the Sebastian's Caribbean Jamboree, Disney's The Little Mermaid 2, House of Mouse, and in 2008, he reprised the role of Sebastian as in The Little Mermaid Ariel's Beginnings. He had also done voice-over work in the computer-animated movie Dinosaur. He is survived by his wife and his 3 children.
Sad news. Our sympathies go out to the family and friends, but quite a distinguished career.
Mm-hmm. And he will live on, obviously, as most Disney characters do.
And nothing like Disney to make you immortal, right?
Absolutely.
So that was all we had for our entertainment news. Mm-hmm. We'll be right back with our insightful picks of the week. Go for your insightful pick.
So my insightful pick is a comedy that is actually on the Peacock network. So again, talking about all those obscure streaming channels, and the name of the show is called Girls 5 Eva. And so what it is when a one-hit wonder group from the golden era of girl groups gets sampled by a young rapper, the members reunite to give their pop star dreams one more shot. This time, Dawn, Wiki, Gloria, and Summer must navigate the intricacies of a new, more socially conscious society, realizing that their old music wasn't all that uplifting to young women. So it kind of toggles between 1999 and 2021, and the story kind of sheds some light on the fall from stardom and their return to relevance as the women balance spouses, kids, jobs, debt, aging parents, and shoulder pain. So it's kind of a interesting take, to kind of see, all these musicians who had these one hits and kind of faded, from existence, and how, do they manage these days? So, the one person works in her brother's restaurant. The other one supposedly, is this glamorous jet setter, when you find out really that she actually just works for an airport, and all of her photos that she posts on Instagram are all fake, that she's pretending to still have this high lifestyle, this big lifestyle that she doesn't even have anymore. And the one is now a dentist. She got a regular job after, the fact. And then the other one, who married a boy band singer, basically they don't even really live together anymore. Everything's kind of fake. And so at one point she's on a FaceTime with him, but it's actually a cameo, so she paid to have this message recorded from her husband. So really kind of quirky. It's a really fun cast. So if you're somebody that remembers the girl groups of the late 90s, it's kind of nostalgic to see, this is what happens when, you're in your 40s now, and, trying to relive your youth, I guess, in some ways. So really kind of funny.
Nice. Good pick.
Thank you.
So my pick this week, much like last week, I'm digging into the archives here. This time it's digging deep with Hulu. And I pulled out Star Trek Enterprise. So this was a series that originally aired for 4 seasons from 2001 to 2005. It was the last Star Trek series in what's considered the Next Generation era that included Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and the Star Trek motion pictures with the Next Generation cast. So set in the 22nd century, a century before Captain Kirk's 5-year mission, Jonathan Archer captains the United Earth ship Enterprise during the early years of Starfleet, leading up to the Earth-Romulan War and the formation of the United Federation of Planets. The show takes place during the early pioneering days of deep space exploration, when interstellar travel is in its infancy and the United Federation of Planets is still decades away. Captain Jonathan Archer is the prototype for a Starfleet captain to come. He's bold, intensely curious, and eager to venture where no man has gone before. Unlike the seasoned, sometimes unflappable officers of the 24th century, the crew of Enterprise exhibits a sense of wonder and excitement, as well as a little trepidation about the strange things they'll encounter. With their star charts mostly empty, they'll have to prove they're ready for life among the stars. This was a bold attempt to transition from the post-apocalyptic world seen in the movie Star Trek First Contact to the technologically and socially advanced world from the original 1960s version of the show onward. At times, the show struggles to present itself as technologically inferior to what we saw in the other franchises. Character development through season 1 is rough, but by the second season, you settle in nicely with the familiar crew and their idiosyncrasies. The cavalcade of alien appearances is in line with what you'd expect, some familiar faces, some not so much. Modern prosthetics and CGI bring to life some of the campier aliens familiar to us from the original series. The Andorians, for instance, are more animated, especially their antenna. The Gorn now looks as intimidating as we were led to believe when we faced a single actor in a poorly fitting rubber suit. For the most part, the Vulcans are seen as the overbearing parents to humans rather than the staunch, if logical, allies we know them to be later in history. And there's a whole host of new and interesting aliens. It is worth noting that 2021 is the 55th anniversary of Star Trek.
Wow.
Which, makes me feel old. I can honestly say I wasn't there for the original series
Right,
airings.
exactly.
So I'm not that old. You'll find numerous conventions. When I was doing my research, there was tons of conventions going around marking it, and various virtual panels and appearances around the world. One of the biggest ones that's being held is being held August 11th to the 15th. It was originally supposed to be held in December at the Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. The parade of former Star Trek stars appearing at the convention is huge, including Connor Trinneer, Dominic Keating. Connor Trinneer was the engineer from Enterprise. Dominic Keating was the tactical officer. Gary Graham, who played the Vulcan ambassador, who made numerous appearances in Enterprise. And John Billingsley, who was Dr. Phlox on the show. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of stars from every incarnation out there. We'll put a link in the show notes to the actual convention itself. I'd love to go, but I can't imagine we're going to be out in Vegas in August.
Probably
That's
not.
just not humanly possible for me. So anyway, Golden Oldie here. I'm on season 3 at this point in time, binging the 4 seasons of Star Trek Enterprise on Hulu, and we'll be right back. So that was it for the show today, but before we go, we did have an event that we went to this weekend.
Yes,
why don't you
we did.
Tell the audience about that?
So one of the events that we kind of look forward to during convention season is Monster Mania. It's one that's usually held twice a year in 2 different locations, one in the South Jersey area in Cherry Hill, and then another in Maryland. Obviously, with everything being shut down, they haven't been able to do any conventions. So back in March, they came up with an idea to do Monster Mania Mini Mall. Basically, this was going to be an outside event where they would be able to actually have more vendors than they normally would be able to hold in at least Cherry Hill. I don't know what the Maryland location
Yeah, we've never
is
been to
like.
that
We've
one.
never been to that one, so I don't know if it's a bigger or smaller or whatnot. So they were going to be able to offer more. The other thing too is they were going to have celebrities as well. That's usually one of the big draws of most of the conventions as well. It was going to be cheaper as well because it wasn't going to be a full blown convention like they normally do. It was held at the convention Philadelphia Greater
Expo
Philadelphia Expo Center in Oaks, which we've been to many times, and they actually have an outside area that's fenced off. We had never been to anything that was like that. So you had to go through one gate. They scanned your tickets. You had to purchase your tickets in advance. They weren't doing anything at the door. It was just 2 days. Where normally Monster Mania is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Again, more vendor-centric, than anything else. But again, most of these vendors haven't been able to sell their stuff to the public, in any sort of event. So this was great for them to have an opportunity. They had a couple of different food trucks. They had music playing. Everything, for the most part, was very well spread out. The only issue was that it was hot.
Painfully, 94 degrees.
And it was funny because one of the things they had posted, I guess it was Saturday night before Sunday, they were like, when we picked these dates, we were figuring, we don't want to do it during the summer because it'll be too hot.
Yeah,
and
ironically.
Here, the weekend that we hit, it's 85 on Saturday and 95 on Sunday. And unfortunately, at least one of the vendors who was there on Saturday wasn't able to be there on Sunday because they got heat stroke.
Yeah.
So they were, walking around selling bottles of water. When we even checked in, they said, make sure you have, that you're drinking plenty of water and that you're staying cool. A couple of the vendors that were selling umbrellas sold out. We brought our own umbrellas. We brought our own waters. We were trying to stay as hydrated as we could. I think the only negative, which again, wasn't really that bad of a negative, would have been if they would have had some tents set up for relaxation
Right.
areas.
But there's no way for them to anticipate.
Right, exactly. When they were planning this in March, it could have been raining, and then if it was raining, you probably would have had a bunch of vendors not show up because all of their goods would have gotten destroyed in it. So
while we were there, we did take some footage. We
Mm-hmm.
put some clips together for the enjoyment of our viewing audience that we will show you now.